Hello and welcome back to part 2 of topic number 3, models of community enterprise and ecosystems. Again, the coordinating partners for this topic are TOOS and Communities Creating Jobs. And the learning objectives for this second part of this topic are to be aware of the various elements of the ecosystem within which a community enterprise operates, to understand the relationship between the community enterprise and the different parts of the ecosystem, to understand the importance of those relationships and the different forms of collaboration and cooperation that might be involved. And this is, we're looking at this topic because a community enterprise doesn't stand alone in isolation. It's always part of a larger set of bodies, organizations, and relationships, and it needs to mind all those and consider all of those in the course of its operation. So in this topic then we'll cover the community enterprise ecosystem, the relationships between the different parts of that ecosystem, and the nature of some of those relationships. So when we're looking at an enterprise ecosystem, we're talking about, this is a kind of a definition of ecosystem in a general sense, an interconnected complex of elements. So it's interconnected, it's a complex, it's a series of different units which interact in positive and symbiotic ways. So positive ways, so it's to the benefit of the various parts of the ecosystem, and symbiotic in that it means that in these relationships there are benefits for both of the parties involved in the relationship. So there's the benefit of all elements in the complex. So all of the elements in the enterprise ecosystem benefit from these relationships. They mightn't all benefit to the same extent all the time, but they all do benefit. So just in the diagram there, we've outlined some of the potential elements of the ecosystem. And you can see the community enterprise there kind of at the heart of it. But obviously you have suppliers to the community enterprise, and sometimes in a community setting, the community enterprise will try to make sure that as many of those suppliers come also from within that community. Community members, these are the individuals, households, and maybe other organizations within the community. Community organizations, we have them there as a specific part of that. Other enterprises in the community, because often within any particular area or area of interest, there will be relationships between different enterprises within those spaces. Community customers, obviously a very important part of the ecosystem for the community enterprise. The whole community enterprise sector is part of the thinking here, because the community enterprise sector and the social enterprise sector, the members provide support to each other. They work with each other. Even if they're in competition, there's a degree of cooperation between them. And we put in as well government departments, and we put in that as a kind of a catch-all of various agencies and public bodies who are relevant in this particular context. So there's a whole series of different types of relationships. We just put a few of them here just to as an example. So customer retailer, obviously, so the retailer could be the community enterprise and the customer is the customer. Supplier purchaser, so again the purchaser can be the community enterprise and the various suppliers who supply to it. There's a whole series of relationships there as well. The owner and the corporate entity, that's another kind of who are the owners of the community enterprise, and the corporate entity in this case is the community enterprise itself. The board members perhaps and the community, another set of relationships, and then internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. So these are the internal stakeholders within the community and the external stakeholders who are outside of the community but are still very relevant to the ecosystem of the community enterprise. So these ecosystems are really important for community enterprises and they need to be maintained. And that doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't happen unless you give it some attention and put some effort into doing it. And so we're saying here that it needs conscious intervention. It needs to be something on your agenda, something to be thought about, and something to be addressed in a proactive kind of a way. So one of the key things is communication. So this is communication at a personal level, so that people are treated as individuals. In today's world of marketing and engagement and so on, this personal communication is regarded as very important. People need to feel personally, individually valued. The statements of mutual benefit, it's actually important to remind people of what the mutual benefit is, and to let people know that that benefit isn't taken for granted, and that it's recognized by the community enterprise. So that this constant reinforcing of the fact that that mutual benefit does exist is important. Involvement in decision making, so bringing your ecosystem into your decision making. This can often happen at a strategic level, where you engage with a whole variety of stakeholders to review your strategic intentions and to assist you in deciding what the strategic focus ought to be. Celebrations of success. So when you do work together, when there is positive cooperation and it is successful, it's important that that's recognized and celebrated. And collaborative projects. Then one of the ways of maintaining relationships and maintaining positive interactivity is to be involved in collaborative projects in which people work together towards common ends. And I want to talk a little bit here about collaboration, because it's not a straightforward thing. It's not a straightforward kind of a concept. It's a word that's often used these days, and there's a lot of talk about collaboration among stakeholders. But the people who are talking about it aren't always clear about what it means, or indeed what is expected of the collaborators. And that's really important to get right. Collaboration is difficult, it's not easy. So it is important that it's clear about what we expect to achieve from it. And it can be costly. It doesn't come free. Collaboration needs effort and it needs resources provided to it. Now, we're not saying that collaboration isn't a good idea. It is a good idea, and it's a good thing to be trying. But at local level, in particular, and at small scales, it can give rise to difficulties and challenges. As we said, it takes time and resources, and they are not always made available because smaller bodies, in particular, and smaller entities struggle, or at least perceive themselves as struggling, just to keep the show on the road, just to keep things ticking along. And having additional resources available to put into something like this can be quite a challenge. Often as well, bodies don't have autonomy of decision making. They're maybe answerable to national bodies or regional bodies, so the collaboration can be difficult because of that lack of autonomy. And then, of course, bodies sometimes are in competition with each other, both for resources, for recognition, for a whole series of things, both within the community perhaps, and externally as well. I was working on a project there some time ago with an organization, and their biggest challenge was that a new organization had been set up in their community, which was actually working in the same general space as they were, and was looking for resources from the community in the same way, which was a big challenge. So organizations, when they're working, they can work in a variety of ways, all of which have kind of different levels of partnership involved. The most straightforward and the easiest and the most common probably as well is the organization working at an individual level, just working on its own, doing its own thing with its own resources. There's then a consultative kind of way of operating, and that still involves a single organization doing its own work and using its own resources, but with some input from others, so that this organization asks others what they think about things, and they maybe modify how they're approaching something in the light of that. But it's still work done by an individual organization. Cooperative, that's where there is a joint purpose between a number of organizations. And there may even be some joint meetings, shared documents, that kind of idea. But nevertheless, it is still the individual organizations carrying out their individual functions. But knowing that they're aiming at a purpose that is common to other organizations, and knowing what the other organizations are doing to achieve that purpose. Coordination is the next level up then, and this is a more significant level of cooperation, where different organizations carry out different parts of a joint enterprise to achieve a common goal. So again, it's the individual organization acting on its own, but it's doing a certain part of a joint action, and the other organizations are doing other parts of that joint action. So it's a more intense level of engagement between organizations is involved. And then true collaboration, what I call true collaboration anyway, is the highest level of sharing. And in essence, in this context, you have shared goals and objectives. You combine your resources into a single entity which runs those resources, so that there's a kind of a joint, it might be a steering committee, it might be a special purpose organization, but it's a joint exercise which works together to achieve this joint outcome. And you share the benefits, you share the glory, and you share the pain if it's not successful. So the key kind of factors then, which kind of help to decide what is the nature of the engagement between different organizations. You can look at who has the strategy, whose strategy is it, who's providing the resources, who decides on how the resources are allocated, who is providing oversight, who suffers from the failure, who gains from the success, and what level of formality is involved in the arrangement. So if we look at the individual organization acting on its own, everything is at an individual level, and there's no formality is not applicable because there's no relationship anyway. When it comes to consultation, everything is still done by the individual organization, and it is an informal kind of an engagement. There's no written agreements or anything of that nature. In coordination, the strategic approach might be shared, so that there is agreement on what some joint outcomes that are being sought. But all of the other aspects of it are done at an individual level. And again, it's informal because these are informal arrangements. When it comes to cooperation, again, the strategic approach is shared. The resources and the allocation of the resources is individual, but there might be some shared oversight. There might be some shared disbenefits from the failure and shared benefits from the success. And there could be a degree of formality in this, in that there is an agreement that organization A will do X and organization B will do Y. And then when you come to collaboration, everything is shared. That's the whole essence of collaboration, the strategic view, the resources, the allocation, the oversight, etc. And there is real formality in those kinds of arrangements. So again, what we're saying is all types of partnership or joint action are good. It's just to be sure about what everybody expects, and to make sure that there's no disagreements on that. So finally, all of these approaches are valid and important for a community enterprise. When you're working within your ecosystem and you're working on collaborative projects, or you're working together with others, that is really important. But it is really important that you are clear about what is going on and about what is expected. That is very, very important. And be clear about what the community enterprise inputs and benefits are going to be. And I would say also really important to have it written down if it is a large project or an important project, or if it is taking a lot of resources. So some additional resources here for you. The first two are on collaboration and cooperation, and the second two talk about business ecosystems and their importance. I'll see you all again for another unit at a later stage.